My name is Jane, and at 29 years old, I thought I had finally built a life for myself. That downtown Denver apartment represented years of grinding through double shifts and sleepless nights, while my sister got everything handed to her on a silver platter. I never imagined my parents would cross this line, sitting at dinner, casually sliding my sister the keys to my place without even asking me. The look on their faces when I calmly said I'd moved out 8 weeks ago was absolutely priceless. If you're watching this, drop a comment telling me where you're from. Hit subscribe and stay tuned to hear how I finally stood up for myself after years of being the invisible daughter. Growing up in suburban Colorado, I always felt like I existed in my sister Brooklyn's shadow. Our house in Lakewood had 5 bedrooms, but somehow the spotlight only ever seemed to find its way to one child. From the very beginning, the pattern was crystal clear. Brooklyn received attention, praise, and resources while I was expected to figure everything out on my own. I still remember my 15th birthday like it was yesterday. I had been dropping hints for months about a small party with my friends at this pizza joint I loved called Tony's. When the day finally came, my parents had completely forgotten. My mother was busy driving Brooklyn, then just 10, to her gymnastics meet across town. My father was pulling overtime at his accounting firm. I ended up ordering a medium pepperoni pizza by myself and eating it alone in my bedroom while scrolling through SAT prep books online. Meanwhile, when Brooklyn turned 15 5 years later, our parents rented out the entire community center, hired a live band, and surprised her with a cherry red Honda Civic with a giant white bow on the hood. The inequality was staggering. School events followed the exact same crushing pattern. My parents rarely showed up to my honor roll ceremonies or speech and debate tournaments. When I graduated as valedictorian of my high school class, my mother spent most of the ceremony FaceTiming with Brooklyn, who was at summer camp, rather than watching me deliver my speech to 400 people. For Brooklyn, they rearranged entire vacation schedules to accommodate her volleyball tournaments and stayed up until midnight helping with her science fair projects. The favoritism was so obvious that even my friends started commenting on it, though I always made excuses for my parents. The disparity only got worse during college. I worked 4 different jobs simultaneously, mornings at Starbucks, afternoons tutoring kids, evenings at the campus library, and weekends waiting tables at Olive Garden. Every single dollar went toward my education at University of Colorado Boulder, where I studied business administration with a focus on digital marketing. My parents contributed what they generously called what we could manage, which amounted to roughly $800 per semester, not even enough to cover textbooks, let alone tuition. Meanwhile, Brooklyn attended Colorado State University with complete parental financial support. She changed her major 6 different times, took a gap year to discover herself backpacking through Europe, and still graduated debt-free thanks to our parents covering absolutely everything. When she struggled with organic chemistry, my father hired a private tutor at $75 per hour. When she wanted to live in the expensive dorms near campus, they paid her housing and meal plan without question. After graduating with a 3.8 GPA and 0 family fanfare, I landed an entry-level position at a digital marketing agency in downtown Denver. The starting salary was modest, but I budgeted like my life depended on it, because it did. I lived with 4 roommates in a cramped house in Aurora, packing lunches every single day, never eating out, and putting aside every spare penny I could find. After 4 grueling years of promotions, side hustles managing Instagram accounts for local businesses, and living like a monk, I finally saved enough for a down payment on a small 1-bedroom apartment in the trendy Rhino district. That apartment meant absolutely everything to me. 850 square feet of polished concrete floors, exposed brick walls, and floor-to-ceiling windows that caught the morning sunlight just perfectly. The kitchen was barely big enough for 2 people, but I bought a gorgeous reclaimed wood island that served as both my workspace and dining table. Every single piece of furniture represented months of careful saving and deliberate choice. The charcoal gray sectional sofa took 8 months of overtime to afford. The mid-century modern bedroom set came from 5 different estate sales, lovingly restored during my weekends. Nothing matched perfectly in that magazine-perfect way, but everything was intentionally chosen with love and sacrifice. This wasn't just an apartment, it was proof that I could create something beautiful entirely on my own terms. Just before all this family chaos exploded, I had gone through a devastating breakup with Connor, my boyfriend of nearly 3 years. We met at a marketing conference in Las Vegas and had what I thought was a rock-solid relationship. He was creative, driven, and seemed to genuinely understand my complicated family dynamics better than anyone else ever had. Then one random Thursday evening over takeout Chinese food, he casually mentioned he had accepted a job offer in Portland without discussing it with me first. When I expressed complete shock and hurt, he seemed genuinely surprised that I might have wanted some input on a decision that would effectively end our relationship. The breakup left me questioning my judgment about people and feeling particularly emotionally vulnerable. Despite the unequal treatment that had defined my entire childhood, I maintained a surface-level relationship with my family. I called my mother every Sunday morning without fail. I sent thoughtful birthday and holiday gifts that I couldn't really afford. I attended monthly family dinners, driving 45 minutes each way to sit at that familiar table where conversation inevitably centered around Brooklyn's latest drama or accomplishment. Brooklyn's pattern of complete instability became impossible to ignore as we entered our 20s. While I built a steady career trajectory with consistent promotions and growing responsibilities, my sister bounced between jobs like she was playing hopscotch. She worked as a barista at a trendy coffee shop for exactly 2 months before quitting because the 6 a.m. opening shift disrupted her creative energy flow. She lasted 5 weeks at a dental office receptionist position because her supervisor just didn't understand her organizational system. She tried selling makeup for an MLM company but gave up after failing to recruit anyone in 6 months. After each job inevitably ended, our parents stepped in with immediate financial support. They paid her rent when she couldn't make it. They covered her car payments when she declared the work environment too toxic for her mental health. They even funded a 4-month yoga teacher training program in Sedona when she claimed job hunting had triggered severe anxiety attacks. All while constantly telling me how proud they were of my independence and self-sufficiency, as if my ability to survive was convenient for them rather than absolutely necessary for my survival. About 10 months ago, I started noticing deeply concerning patterns regarding my apartment. The first incident happened after I invited Brooklyn over for dinner to celebrate her latest job interview. As I was cooking homemade lasagna, she wandered around my place opening closets, checking out my storage solutions, and making comments that seemed innocent enough at first. "This place is so perfect for hosting parties," she said, running her fingers along my granite countertops. "You have so much space for just one person living here." I thought nothing of it until she started asking detailed questions about my monthly rent, HMA fees, building security, and whether my lease allowed overnight guests. Red flags should have been flying, but I was still operating under the assumption that my sister respected basic boundaries. A month later, she called asking to borrow my black cocktail dress for what she claimed was an important job interview. When I came home from work that evening, I found not only the dress missing from my closet, but also 2 pairs of expensive heels, a designer handbag I had splurged on for my 28th birthday, and several pieces of jewelry including my grandmother's pearl earrings. When I confronted her the next day, she acted genuinely surprised by my anger, saying, "I thought you'd want to help me look professional for the interview. It's not like you were using any of that stuff today anyway." The unannounced visits began escalating soon after that incident. I would come home after long days at the office to find Brooklyn sitting on my couch, having been let in by the building's doorman who recognized her as my sister. She would wave off my surprise with casual comments like, "I was in the neighborhood," or "I needed some sister bonding time." These visits always ended with her asking to borrow something: money for an emergency car repair, my laptop because hers was acting super weird, or my credit card because she had left her wallet at her friend's house. The situation reached a boiling point when I returned from a weekend visiting college friends in Fort Collins to discover that Brooklyn had hosted a full dinner party in my apartment. 10 complete strangers had used my dishes, sat on my furniture, and left red wine stains on my cream-colored area rug that I had saved 6 months to buy. When I called her in absolute shock and fury, she actually laughed it off. "My place is way too small for entertaining, and I knew you wouldn't mind. We cleaned up most of everything anyway." I finally sat her down over coffee at a neutral location to establish crystal-clear boundaries. "Brooklyn, I need you to understand that my apartment is my private sanctuary. You cannot come over without calling me first and getting explicit permission. You cannot borrow my belongings without asking, and you absolutely cannot host parties or events here whether I'm home or not." Her response was completely dismissive and predictable. "Why are you being so uptight about everything? We're sisters, Jane. What's yours is mine, right? You've always been weird about sharing stuff." When I stood firm on my boundaries, she did what she always did, called our parents to complain about my selfish behavior. That same evening, I received a lecture from our father about family supporting each other unconditionally and a tearful phone call from our mother asking why I was being so mean when Brooklyn just admires your beautiful home so much. The validation finally came from my friend Amanda, who witnessed one of Brooklyn's uninvited visits. After my sister left with yet another borrowed item, Amanda turned to me with genuine concern in her eyes. "Jane, that interaction was absolutely not normal. You know that, right? The way she went through your mail like she lived here, the comments about how much everything must have cost, the way she just took your cardigan without even asking. She's completely disrespecting your boundaries." The absolute final straw came when I noticed things in my apartment being moved around or disappearing entirely without explanation. My passport, which I always kept in a specific drawer in my bedroom dresser, suddenly appeared on my bookshelf. Important financial documents were rearranged in my filing cabinet. A pair of expensive AirPods vanished completely. The security and sanctity of my own home began to feel compromised, and with it, my sense of safety and independence that I had worked so hard to build. The breaking point arrived after I returned from a crucial 3-day business trip to San Francisco. I had been presenting our agency's biggest campaign to a potential Fortune 500 client, and the meetings had gone exceptionally well. My supervisor had hinted at a possible promotion to senior account manager if we landed this massive contract. I was riding a wave of professional accomplishment and pride as I unlocked my apartment door with my rolling suitcase. That feeling evaporated instantly and completely. My neat, meticulously organized space looked like it had been hit by a Category 3 hurricane. Empty wine bottles lined every surface in the kitchen. Greasy takeout containers overflowed from my trash can onto the floor. The sink was piled high with dirty dishes growing what looked suspiciously like green mold. My throw pillows were scattered across the hardwood floors, and an unfamiliar leather jacket hung over my dining room chair. As I moved through the apartment in growing horror, the violations multiplied exponentially. Multiple damp towels lay crumpled on my bathroom floor. My expensive skincare products had been used with caps left off and contents significantly diminished. The spare bedding I kept in my hallway closet was rumpled on the couch alongside several blankets I had never seen before in my life. The most devastating discovery waited in my bedroom. My personal journal, which I kept locked in my nightstand drawer, lay wide open on my unmade bed with pages visibly turned and creased. Next to it sat a wine glass with a lipstick smudge that perfectly matched the shade my sister always wore. The invasion of this most private space, the words I had written about my therapy journey, my deepest insecurities, my dreams for the future, was breathtaking in its complete violation. I called Brooklyn immediately, my hands literally shaking with a rage I rarely allowed myself to feel. When she answered with a casual, "Hey sis, what's up?" I could barely form coherent sentences. "My apartment. You were in my apartment. With people. You read my private journal." Her response was so predictably selfish it would have been comical in any other circumstance. 3 months of careful planning had led to this moment. While my family orchestrated their intervention around my dining room table, I sat there knowing something they didn't. I held all the power for the first time in my adult life. My father cleared his throat with that familiar authority he used for serious conversations. "Your sister has had some temporary setbacks recently," he began, as though continuing a conversation we'd been having all evening. "The job market is incredibly competitive right now." My mother nodded vigorously, playing her supporting role perfectly. "So competitive, and these apartment rental prices are just absolutely insane these days." I said nothing, taking a small sip of the sweet tea I didn't want, watching this performance unfold exactly as I had predicted it would. "The thing is," my father continued, reaching into his shirt pocket with deliberate ceremony, "we think we've found the perfect solution. Temporary, of course, just until Brooklyn gets back on her feet financially." With theatrical precision, he placed a familiar set of keys on the table between us. "My keys. To my Rhino apartment. We think it makes perfect sense for your sister to stay at your place for a while," my mother said, her voice bright with false certainty and manipulation. "You have all that extra space, and you're at work most of the time anyway." "We already spoke with your building management company," my father added with smug satisfaction. "Mr. Rodriguez seemed very accommodating. He said it's no problem at all to add Brooklyn to your lease temporarily." I stared at those keys, feeling a strange calm settling over my entire body like a warm blanket. "You spoke to my building manager without talking to me first?" "We knew you'd agree once you really thought about it rationally," my mother said with that condescending tone she used when she thought she was being reasonable. Family helps family, Jane. That's what we've always taught you girls. Brooklyn finally looked up from her phone, a small victorious smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I promise I'll keep everything super clean this time, she said, the implication that she would be moving in regardless of my opinion hanging heavy in the air between us. My father nodded with decisive finality. It's all arranged then. Brooklyn can move in this weekend, just for a few months until she finds something more permanent. They were all looking at me now, waiting for my predictable acquiescence. The script they had followed my entire life playing out exactly as they expected it would. The responsible daughter would once again sacrifice her own needs for the family. Would once again put her sister's problems above her own well-being. Would once again accept the completely unequal distribution of support and respect that had defined every relationship in this house. I looked at each of them in turn, my father's confident expression, my mother's manipulative pleading eyes, my sister's barely concealed triumph, and made my decision. I felt strangely calm as I looked at my family gathered around that familiar table, all waiting for my predictable compliance with their demands. For once in my adult life, I held information they didn't have, power they couldn't anticipate or control. The irony that they had inadvertently created this perfect moment through their own actions was absolutely beautiful. That's actually really funny, I said, my voice steady and clear as crystal. I haven't lived in that apartment for 8 weeks. The silence that followed was absolutely complete and perfect. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. My father's confident expression froze mid-smile, then crumbled into total confusion. Brooklyn's smug victory smile vanished instantly, replaced by widening eyes and parted lips. What do you mean you haven't lived there? My mother finally asked, her voice trembling with the first hint of panic. Where have you been staying all this time? My father leaned forward, his face flushing with anger, always his go-to emotion when control slipped from his grasp. I still own the apartment, I clarified calmly. I still pay the mortgage every month, but I don't live there anymore. I moved out 8 weeks ago after Brooklyn let herself in while I was on that business trip, invited strangers over for multiple nights, went through my personal belongings, and read my private journal. Brooklyn's face went pale, then bright red. I didn't, it wasn't like that at all. It was exactly like that, I countered, still maintaining my composure. You violated my space and my privacy repeatedly. You always have, because you've never been taught that other people's boundaries actually matter. Boundaries again, my mother said, throwing up her hands in exasperation. You and these ridiculous boundaries. We're family, Jane. Family doesn't need boundaries. Healthy families absolutely have boundaries, I replied firmly. And healthy families respect each other. They don't play obvious favorites or expect one child to constantly sacrifice for another or make major decisions about someone's home without consulting them first. The conversation continued for another hour, with tears, accusations, and desperate attempts at emotional manipulation. But I held firm. I had spent 8 weeks building a new life in a cozy apartment in Capitol Hill, surrounded by chosen family who actually respected my choices. As I drove home that night to my real sanctuary, the place where I felt truly safe and valued, I realized I was smiling. For the first time in my life, I had rewritten the script they had written for me. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is protect your own peace, even when it means disappointing people you love. Sometimes setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who constantly violated them? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Remember that protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's absolutely necessary for your mental health and well-being.